Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on KHOU 11+. I'm Stephanie Simmons, and today we are diving into a serious conversation about how the digital world often collides with exploitation and human trafficking. Today we are joined by Joe Madison with Demand Disruption, which is a group dedicated to fighting commercial sexual exploitation, and also Victoria Sinis, who is a former recruiter for an OnlyFans agency. Thank you both for being here for this very serious topic. So we're going to start with you, Victoria. Tell us about your connection with OnlyFans and how things unraveled for you.
Yeah, definitely. So I was actually approached about 2 years ago to work for this thing called an OnlyFans agency. And so not a lot of people have actually heard of OnlyFans agencies. And so they're essentially like a third party that are in control of girls' accounts. And the main, I guess, point and purpose of an agency is to maximize girls' spent money that they make. So I like to break it down kind of into three different elements of what an agency is. But the main point of an OnlyFans agency is to represent the girl and make as much money as possible off her account. And that's kind of the world that I was in. For
people who don't know what OnlyFans is, I guess we should kind of rewind a little bit and just start there, and it would really highlight how this this industry can quickly go south.
Yeah.
So tell us about that first.
Definitely. So I actually think it's quite interesting understanding the context of OnlyFans because the original intent of it is actually quite smart, I guess you could say. So OnlyFans actually originated back in 2016. And from my understanding, the whole purpose of OnlyFans was essentially to decentralize social media. So we have these mainstream platforms like Instagram, I guess Facebook was the bigger one back in 2016. And it's really difficult to build an audience, create communities, and get paid. So OnlyFans was like, okay, just say if I loved to bake, and I could jump onto OnlyFans, I could make like a locked account, so you have to pay to come onto my OnlyFans, but you would see all of my cooking. And so every single day I can put up different recipes, I can make different little like tips and tricks, and I can send it to you as locked content. But the whole allure of it is that you can sit there and be like, hey Vic, I made those muffins and I really struggled in this and that, and we can have direct communication. And so that's the really important part there. But what OnlyFans has is this thing called Not Safe for Work, and Not Safe for Work is adult content. So in 2020, it kind of blew up basically as a porn platform. And so now statistically, there's different stats that say either from 70 to 90% of all of the content on OnlyFans now is not safe for work.
90%.
Because subscribers pay to get things that they can't get easily on the internet elsewhere, essentially.
Yeah. And then again, there's this whole allure now of I can have a conversation with you. But as you can see, the original intent of OnlyFans kind of was a pretty smart way to be able to decentralize and make little micro communities. But yeah, now it's just something very different.
Okay, and
just as I'm listening to that, it reminds me of where webcams exist on a porn site, for example. If a user is on a porn site and they're watching content on a video, well, they'll always have a pop-up that says, click here. Like you, at that point, you're calling the shots, and it's you one-on-one with somebody virtually through a camera. And so anytime you see a business model that can bring in a highly motivated, return audience that absolutely will pay for access, it's just naturally going to have that potential. And then OnlyFans, again, it was a great idea, like direct access to experts, people that you can connect with and have this one-on-one community, if you will. Well, it didn't take long for that to then become an opportunity to convert it to a very high revenue platform of almost all pornography, 70 to 85% pornography.
And you understand why the girls, not that it's right or wrong, no judgment, why the women are being lured to this as well, because they get paid, as we've done news stories on, very, very well to do these jobs. And then you have the lure of the people, the amount of people who are paying for that relationship, that direct access. So that can go south very quickly. So that's one of the things. How long were you with that agency who worked directly with OnlyFans until you started to side-eye the process and that business model?
Yeah, so I'd worked, again, this was a startup, so where your boots on the ground type of thing. So for about 6 months, it was like an unofficial consultancy role because we had no revenue to be able to pay staff. So being paid on the books as a contractor, I lasted 5.5 weeks.
And then what made you, did you quit, or did you go to your friend who you were working with and say, something's not right here, I don't feel like this is morally correct?
Yeah. So there's, I guess, a whole series of events that led to it. And I guess you kind of have to understand the workings of an agency to be able to understand kind of the lens of what I had on. But to put it simply, I was doing all the marketing. And helping to build that department, because again, OnlyFans is run like a business, and so to be able to make good money realistically, you need to have a really strong marketing strategy. There's this real misconception that I can just jump on there, it can be in the shadows, I can just do a couple things and I'll make a lot of money. But realistically, the average wage of an OnlyFans girl is $180 a month, and it's because it's because of this stigma that's out there that I can just jump on, make a lot of money, but it's actually a business model. And so one of the most critical components of that is the marketing element, because again, where are you going to get your subscribers from? Where are you going to get your clients from? Well, you have to market that to be able to funnel them. So that was my main role and responsibility, is the marketing and the social media element. But then what happened is, one of the biggest things of an OnlyFans agency is it's not the girl talking to you. That's why I emphasize the fact that the most alluring thing is this direct connection that you can have. But if you think about this logistically, just say if you have a girl who has hundreds of thousands of followers on her Instagram, and she's promoting, come chat with me on my OnlyFans. So you have thousands of people that are going to her OnlyFans. Well, she can't facilitate those conversations. She can't sit there 7 days a week, 24/7, typing to people. There's such a content requirement as well of what you have to facilitate. So that's why agencies exist, to offset all that work. So we come and we pretend to be the girl.
So you're going in and talking with those people who have subscribed to the certain outlets.
So yes. So again, as a business model, we don't physically do that, because again, that's not efficient for our time. So we then offset the chatting. So there are these things called chatters. So you hire people from third world countries to pretend to be the girl, and you pay them minimum wage. So ours were actually from the Philippines. And so we would pay a team of people from the Philippines. We would give them briefs that would outline all this information about the girl. And their role was a sales commission role. And
I see, okay.
Yeah, so their role was like 6 to 7 days a week for like 12 to 16 hours to sit there and talk to these subscribers, pretending to be the girl, to make as much money as possible.
And you could be talking to a man, a woman, doesn't matter what age, or my goodness, okay. Okay.
There's so much. So one of the reasons we wanted Victoria to come to Houston from all the way from Australia, or parts that she's been all over the country, really having this conversation. And we're going to have her at Houston Crime Stoppers tonight from 6:30 to 8:30. It's a free event. We'd love for the community to come out, because the part that I really want to show is what you heard just now was a business model. You heard an approach that definitely had sales in it, definitely had marketing in it, and no small amount of manipulation. Well, now pick that up, take that, and put that into the demand forum that we focus on so much. Take it into this this adult content arena. Again, consumption is driven by access. It's driven by justification. Well, she's doing this for money, so why can't, this is no big deal. You don't know a lot of things that, on the front end, that you're getting into and that you're connecting with, and even the illicit industries that you're driving from a demand perspective. This conversation is fascinating to me. And I've mentioned it before, but I spent 25 years in strategic sales. Everything I hear from this process that Victoria explains so well, and everything I see with men and porn sites and illicit sex, it's all a sales cycle. All of it is. And it's all a sales cycle that gets you entering under a pretense. Like, these women aren't told, you're going to bear all, and we're going to put a lot of pressure on you, and you're going to have a hell of a lot of content you've got to come up with, and we're going to give you $180 a month. That's not how that conversation goes. So imagine if I am supplying the demand by paying for this service, and in doing so, I'm now paying good money for this woman to do what I want. It's a control thing. I'm not going to just ask her to wave and talk to me or whatever. I'm going to ask her for more extreme things, on and on and on. So while that escalates, the demand and requirement for the woman who's being really brought along her own internal sales cycle, that is also ramping up. Well, you need to do more if you want to make more money. It becomes an escalation, and then there is this intersection, and expectations become so unrealistic. And so now you've got a buyer who doesn't realize, a consumer doesn't realize he's talking to a guy in the Philippines. You know, he thinks he's having this conversation.
Yeah.
And then
not outwardly told.
Yeah, and I guess to add on to what you were saying about that, and this is the marketing part is what I think is really important and substantial for people to understand as well, and the gravity of it, because what we don't understand is on a massive magnitude, people are being softly influenced to be desensitized to hypersexualized content. So that's why we have such an increase in people buying it. But then also we see this new phenomenon of a generation of women idolizing, becoming OnlyFans girls. And so with that, when you market for OnlyFans at the specific agency I was at, we would say to the girls, you need to have like 3 to 5 TikTok accounts. And on those TikTok accounts, every single day, you need to be posting 5 unique videos per account. And so that means 20 unique videos every single day just on TikTok of hypersexualized content.
You tell them hypersexualized.
So we actually had hired an expert that would study algorithms and trends. And so this person every single day was sending us very specific innuendo provocative videos with trending hashtags, trending sounds, trending captions, everything you can think of. And we would send that to the girls and say every single day you have to put this type of content out there. And getting girls to do this, we had one girl at the agency in 7 days of doing this method, one TikTok got 2.2 million views. So the reason I say that is that's one agency.
The allure of it.
It's a formula.
In Australia, with one girl, one video, 2.2 million people seeing this suggestive content with the intent of leading you at OnlyFans. So it's like, what's actually happening here on a greater cultural? I was literally having a conversation this morning with this girl who's like, yeah, it's everywhere in Houston. Everyone does OnlyFans. And it's like, this is where it stems from, this ecosystem of these underground businesses that are mass influencing culture for men to think it's normal, for men to buy this type of stuff, and then for women to idolize doing this type of work.
That's the part that I come back to, is because somebody could rightly say, well, what business is it of yours anyway if somebody wants to have an OnlyFans account or be an Only? That really isn't our point. Our point is everything on the front end is so soft-souled and so manipulative that you don't really understand. And as you get into this process, the problem we have with, and as Victoria was touching on, the business model with a lot of these online interaction sites is first get their attention on TikTok, whatever, Instagram, Twitter, have a video that even if they can't show nudity on that video, be very provocative, and then connect it to all of your other accounts. Find me on, and then you click Linktree or something else, and here is this cascade of different, oh, she's got an OnlyFans, click, and now we're there. That's the same platform, the same playground, the same environment that kids are on, that parents are on, that teens are on. And when you couple that with this legitimizing that we're seeing in our culture of that type of platform from celebrities and others, why wouldn't somebody who's a young person be like, well, yeah, okay, let me just click. Let me follow that path.
You don't realize that
and now they're in the sales cycle. Now they're in the funnel, and that's the part that we really want to get across. We're going to really talk about that tonight in detail, and let the people that are there know here's a very intricate look at how you are brought on without realizing it, how you're agreeing to a sales cycle without even having some consent, and then next thing you know, you're
contributing to this issue. Well, now I want to steer the conversation here because this is really where demand disruption comes in, and what you've seen as well. Talk to us more about the parallels of sex trafficking and sites like OnlyFans and how that can be a twisted web, very dangerous with the digital world.
Indeed. So we are very careful when we talk about different sites, whether or not human trafficking is connected directly to them. We don't say, oh, that site is trafficking people. What we say is, look at the conduit to get to trafficking. Now work backwards. There's live video websites like OnlyFans or even on porn sites. There's porn sites. There are other content drivers that bring somebody into that sales cycle. And so what we have to ask ourselves, and this is something a buyer, I can see his face. I was sitting with a buyer, a guy in our program, who was arrested for solicitation of prostitution. This was the 8th time he's purchased, and he got arrested. It's funny, that's about the average, 8 to 10 times for a buyer that they're going to buy in their life, with some being as much as 200. The conversation, the reason it comes to me now is, he said, I never really saw how it was all connected until they went through our escalation dynamic. They went through the stair step of understanding how softcore to hardcore pornography to, okay, well, I've seen it, I want to be around it, strip clubs. okay, strip clubs, or I want to call the shots webcam, and that leads us in this forum. But then that even escalates further. So as we continue along that way and we look at, well, it's all legal, we shouldn't be saying anything about this, we have to understand what we're saying yes to. And that escalation leads to the buyer behavior. About 20 years ago, Arizona State did a study that nearly, what was it, I think 3,800 men a day attempt to buy sex in Houston.
Just in Houston alone?
That was 20 years ago.
My goodness.
And it's online, it's in person. And we'll have an operation here in about a week with law enforcement. We'll be on site when guys are there to buy sex. And I promise you, because it's happening in a hotel, almost every one of those guys found that hotel through a porn site that led to an escort site that then gave them an opportunity to schedule this hookup. So the reason we are so focused on drivers of industry having this demand culture really escalate into buying behavior is because if we don't do that and we don't show the connecting points, we've got men who, like that buyer said, I really had no idea. Like, I'm in a strip club, I was like, hey, what else could I get here? Like, she's making money, I could see people giving her money.
Craving for more.
And now we're back to that list of justification, objectification, access, all of that. And that's consumption. And consumption of a porn video and consumption of buying sex sounds like it is 10 miles apart. Unfortunately, it's on the same continuum. And along that way are people who have to fulfill that demand. And that is so often fulfilled via human trafficking and exploitation. And so while that was a long way around, we have to go the long way around. We have to look at the connecting points, and we have to look at the contributing factors in all of our lives. Because something like OnlyFans or a porn site or even social media, if we put it on our timeline of exploitation, there is a point where kids get smartphones around 12 years old. Well, the average age of first exposure to pornography is closer to 9 years old.
So scary.
And even if it's most of the time it's accident or an older, sibling saying, hey, check this out, like, I'm a man, look, this is what men do. It can be something silly like that seems silly, but it's extremely detrimental. And that influence, and then I get a smartphone 2 or 3 years later, and now I have open access. Even if you put a block on it, it can cascade into a very scary place.
Well, and that's the thing. My son just turned 9 this week, and we trust him with our lives. He is such a good kid.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we as parents aren't so digitally savvy, so we have to learn about parental controls. That's a whole other conversation, and we don't know where they're going, where they have access to being click happy, and where that can take them. So the education of guardians and parents needs to come into question as well. As far as what do you need to do to protect your kids in the digital world?
Yeah, I think as well, just like things to be aware of, but there's a couple things I would love to touch on from what you said, but just on this thing of parents and being wise and being savvy, especially with social media, is we have to understand as well, like, the significance of the influence of influencers. And so just to kind of circle it back to all of those things and where you can have that first form of exposure at such a young age, if you are 12 years old and you are given a phone and TikTok and all of that, like here specifically in America, there's a thing called the Bop House that is in LA, and the Bop House is a bunch of young women that look young, that are all OnlyFans girls. One called Sophie Rain says that I'm a Christian OnlyFans girl, and it's this huge thing. And she does very specifically targeted content that's childlike. And so any young girl that I speak to, literally on Sunday night, I was in Georgia with a bunch of young girls. I'm like, who here watches Bop House content? And all these little girls put their hands up. And I'm explaining to them that, do you understand that these are grooming tactics? You love it, you watch it, you get desensitized to it. And I even hear mothers tell me that their daughters are coming to them and saying that my friends in school are storing up their content that are 14 years old. So then when they're 18, they can go and apply for the Bop House. So we can see that this is like a soft grooming tactic used again by a bigger industry at play to be able to desensitize little girls, make them think that their biggest dreams is to go and work at the Bop House, go be an OnlyFans girl, and then what's that doing to little boys? If from such a young age you're seeing all of this stuff, and it ties into what you were saying about, well, then that's how you become a buyer. So maybe at 12 you're seeing all this hypersexual content, seeing OnlyFans, it's normal, these girls like it, they want to do it, this is a rewarded woman. Okay, then I'm going to watch porn. I read a statistic that 88% of porn is violent porn towards women.
That's right.
So then that's the inauguration that they're having into this. Again, you can see the thing. So then that's their standard. So then perhaps by the time they are having sexual encounters, what's happening, then it's more extreme, then that's how you, and so this is kind of the thread that we're trying to pull on here of, do we see that these things are both, and what's happening digitally might seem very innocent, but that's why it is critical for parents to understand this, because we can see what is unfortunately a very realistic timeline of what is happening to our children, our young adults or whatever, if we're not aware of what we're consuming and what's at play behind it.
So based on your knowledge of this greater world that is OnlyFans, I mean, just talking with you, I've learned so much in the few minutes that you know we've been discussing this. What would you say that parents and guardians should do first? What can they take away today to better check the habits of their children online and to keep them as safe as possible? Are there controls, or are there sites that need to be blocked, or are there questions that need to be asked? Where do they start? It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, well, did you want to go first? Or?
I've got a lot, so you go first.
Okay, I was going to say, I kind of have two answers to this, but I think that parents think that starting young is a negative. I actually work for a non-for-profit back home, and we do a lot of this stuff with even grade 1 children. And so it's about starting young, and it's called, they teach this, like the rule of first exposure, or the law of first exposure. So just say if you can, with your 5-6-year-old, start to put some language around some things of, do you know that sometimes when you go on your phone or on the TV, there's good pictures, bad pictures, and that's literally a book that parents can buy called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And start to say, if you jump onto the iPad or the laptop or whatever it is, and you see something and you know in your tummy it might not make you feel very good, or it might make you feel scared or this, or I want you to come to me, I want you to know that that's okay, and you can talk to me about those things and we're not going to get mad at you. So there's those very basic things you can do. So then a child, you're not sitting there being like, hey, there's porn and bad people out on the internet to a 6-year-old, but you're saying, hey, sometimes there's going to be things that don't make us feel very good. So you're opening it up. So then if your child does see something, then it's the parents that's gone, okay, I've opened up that conversation. I'm not going to freak out. Even if I catch my child, I'm not going to freak out. And I'm going to sit down and be like, okay, how did that make you feel? Do you understand that that's not real? Do you understand that these people don't know? That's not an accurate representation. So you're giving them the first exposure of saying, hey, you might see things, but that's not reality, that's not real, and we need to talk about those things. So that's a very, I think, basic one that you can do. And then just say if maybe you have older kids, the most excellent parenting I've seen, like that mother that I said her daughter is coming to her and telling her that, hey, all my friends are basically storing up porn. She just opens these conversations with her children. Who do you follow? Who do you like? Like, who are the influencers that you... And it's about having a genuine curiosity for what your children are doing. And so then you can sit there. Like, I remember I asked these two, I was at a school in Australia talking about all of this. And one of our biggest influencers back home is OnlyFans girl. So there's a whole like era of girls in Australia that idolize this very specific influencer. Anyway, so these two 15-year-old girls came up to me after I spoke and were like, oh, do you know this girl? I said, I only know her through TikTok. I'm like, I'm assuming that you watch her TikToks. And they're like, yeah. So I just said, why do you like her TikToks? And they go, well, she seems happy and she can travel. And I said, okay, so do you think that to be happy and to travel, you have to do OnlyFans? And they go, yeah.
So they didn't know. And how old is that girl? How old is the influencer?
She's like early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's just by having that conversation with your child. Who do you follow? Why do you like them? Oh, they're happy and they can. Well, do you think that you have to do those things? Do you know that you don't? You have other options. You can be happy and travel and achieve all your dreams. So do you see what I'm trying to paint the picture here? It's opening up those conversations, shame-free, starting young, and just kind of being curious about what your child is consuming.
You would think at age 6, 7, 8, even 9 that they're too young to have these conversations. But what I'm hearing from my son, and we'll get to, I want to hear about your safety tips as well, Joe, is I've heard my son, instead of saying, you know, when we were that age, oh, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman. Now they say, I want to be an influencer. And I asked my son about that. I said, why? And what kind of influencer? Oh, Mr. Beast, that's what he said, makes, you know, X amount of millions of dollars. And they associate influencing with being easy, fun, and money. And you can see that a 9-year-old who we didn't talk with our son about that, he's learning that at school. So these conversations are being had, and you can see how that would influence especially young girls, because they hear easy money, pretty, allure, oh, I can do things with makeup and things like that, and it can go south very quickly.
That's fascinating for you to say that, and here's why. Most parents aren't on television with influence educating the community. You are, and you have been for years. And so it doesn't matter what you do for a living, your kid's gonna see somebody else that's having the cool job, I guess. But you're an influencer. And so there's just a perception that's so powerful with kids when they see it online and they see it in these quick videos, and they see it in ways that's designed for their brain to consume it. Let's be honest, right? Like, these aren't accidents. You've got experts in this industry who customize content so it's easy to consume, it's very compelling, and it's repeatable. It's a process that keeps going and going and going. And after a while, a kid sees that and is like, I like what that did to my brain. I like what I heard. I'm just going to stay with this person. This is now somebody I'm going to like and subscribe to. I want to go back to something you were saying is so crucial, is to have these conversations with your kids. It can seem intimidating, especially if you were raised by a parent who never talked about sex, never talked about any of that stuff, or didn't have to deal with the internet. I mean, that's definitely older kids or adults. But now we've got a separation of generation where kids and the parents all grew up with technology, but they know the wonderful, terrible thing that it is. So we've got a mechanism that we use. It's just an easy thing to remember called trees. It's trust, realize, empathize, edify, and shame-free. The reason we pick trees is because in our workshop, we have a Defend Home workshop that really focuses on exactly what we're talking about here. How do I equip myself even if I don't feel equipped? The trust part is having those conversations, but not using it as a got you. Like, who do you follow? Why don't you say, well, that person's terrible, let me tell you all about it. Like, that's not building trust. Trust is understanding this is important to them, and they are working with a part of their brain that isn't using the prefrontal cortex, not really firing on the logic systems. It's amygdala, it's hypothalamus, it's arousal, it's fight or flight. It's very instinctual, and so when they see things, they're going to respond to it and be hooked very early on and become a customer for life, whatever that product is, even if it's just an influencer. So I say all that trust part is huge, but then also realizing where they are in their life as a kid. We teach the people in our workshop a sentence that I think is very powerful, and I've seen it work well, and we've gotten feedback, and it's this: parents just saying, you know, I can't imagine what it's like to have, I don't know where my phone is, to have one of these at your age. It scares me. I would have destroyed myself if I was your age. And I worry about the things that I know you're not looking for, but look for you and try to find you. And I want us to have an open conversation about that. And then that gives them, now you're not saying, hey, don't do this, don't do that. We're installing all these blocks on your phone. You're saying, we're in this together, and you're too important for me not to ask about this. If we can get to that point and realize where they're coming from, that then leads right into the empathy. Everything I just said was empathy. Yeah. It's different than telling you, don't do this, don't do that. And then the edification is, when I think of you and I see you with your brother, I see you're a protector and you care for him, find something in them that is their character. Anchor that early on, because whether we mean to or not as parents, if our kid's the smart one, that's cool until they get a C or a D and they're like, who am I? What am I? If they're the athlete and they're the best athlete till they're 13 and they get in high school and they get knocked on their butt, who am I? What am I? Like, that's a very real thing. So let's anchor it into things that are concrete and matter. When you get into a person's character and you get into loving them and edifying them, it gives them more resiliency. Because the next thing you're going to talk about is shame-free. And shame, I think we get this idea that it's wagging your finger and yelling, you're a terrible person. It can be as simple as a parent saying to their kid what their parent said to them, which would be something like, hey, we don't do that in this family, we raised you better than that, we're Christian, we don't, whatever that is. That doesn't sound like shame. But whenever you're a kid who's seen these terrible things, and you're thinking, I'm a bad person, God's gonna punish me, I shouldn't have looked at that, but I'm too scared to go tell somebody, and the first thing you hear then is that approach, it confirms that you are all those things, when a parent would never mean to do that. So there are just these ways that we can do that, and whether it's our workshop or whether it's just having something as simple that you can do today, and that is, hey, I saw something on TV today. I want to watch it with you because
let's talk about it.
There was a lot there that scares me, and I really had no idea what you face every day, and I want to talk to you about it. Can we watch it together so we have a meeting point? And then we just do that. To start with watching this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this complex thing. I always tell my son, I say, you're never going to get in trouble for being honest with me. Let's talk about any questions you have, and let's go from there. You will never, ever, ever get in trouble for being honest with your parents.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we wanted the community there tonight, because so many people, they don't have a 6 or 7 year old where they can go, okay, good, I can start this method. They've got a 13-year-old and they don't understand why they're so angry all the time, or they don't understand why they can't connect with that kid who used to be so pleasant and wonderful. We want the community to hear, yes, how industry manipulates, but we also want them to hear things that are very, very concrete, like brain science. We're not gonna go super deep into it. I'm not qualified to go super deep into brain science. Mine barely functions as it is, if you ask my wife. But looking at brain science, we all have a dopamine baseline, and dopamine drives activity, behavior, motivation. A cookie for me, brisket for me is like, whoop, that's my dopamine, right? Let's go. And it never levels off, it's crazy. But when we look at what dopamine does on a scale of eating good food, it goes to maybe 125, 130%. So, oh, that was good. I want that again. If it's great food, maybe 150. If it's cocaine, it's 3,000. Like, it just blows up 300 times whatever our baseline is. But the problem is, what goes up must come down. And when we see pornography, when we see something that even is shocking and uncomfortable if you're a kid at first, your brain is trying to figure it out. You're not equipped, you had no context, you don't even think about sex. And now there's this awful looking thing that is shocking. I believe it is an adverse childhood experience. I think it should be considered by therapists as exactly that. You're seeing abuse. Your brain is going to try to reconcile that. It's not going to be able to when you're young, or even when you're older, but especially when you're young. So what it will do is draw you back to it to try to understand it, even if you didn't like it when you saw it. And then you start to acclimate a little bit. And then you start to think, well, maybe this is what a boy does in a relationship. Or if you're a girl, this is what a girl can expect in a relationship, that abuse and what you see in pornography.
They're trying to process it
It's
themselves.
exactly right. And so then,
as a child,
at some point, it may be pleasurable, especially as your body prepares for puberty and things that are very naturally going to happen. Well, now it's not going to be so disgusting anymore. Now it's going to be something that, for whatever reason, you're drawn to. The reason I say that is your dopamine baseline doesn't go back to here. It goes down to here. And so we see depression, and we see anxiety, and we see these issues that kids struggle with. And we want to talk to the community tonight and then now about, there are signs, and you don't have to be a brain science expert. You just have to be able to have that foundation of trust and conversation that preceded that moment. And if you don't, it's not too late to begin doing that work, because they are going to be influenced by OnlyFans or anything else online. And in doing so, they will fall into that trap of, oh, this is real, and then find out it's not. But by then, it's really very, very late.
Okay. We're going to talk more about the Crime Stoppers event that you're also a part of in just a little bit. But I do want to go back to sites like OnlyFans, because I think we scratched the surface. We got into what it is. But I want to talk more about the people who actually subscribe to these things, and then the people who are actually the OnlyFans. So do you think that young people in particular are aware of what they're signing up for when they join? On both sides.
Yes and no. I think that there's obviously people that are like very well aware of what they do, and if people have the free will, like I see that even when I go into brothels, some people just genuinely want to do it. I know that might be a little bit controversial, and there is obviously so many layers to that, but some people do accept this and just want to do it, and that's what it is. But majority of the people, that's not the case. And so one of the tactics that we would use at the agency is, again, this thing of, we had an Instagram page, and it was, we would throw these lavish parties, we would have these amazing dinners, we had the cars, we had all the things. And so when we would recruit girls and outreach to girls, it was, do you want the lifestyle? It's not, do you, if I went up to a girl and was like, hey, do you want to come do porn, and we'll take like 20% and OnlyFans will take 20%, and you're probably not going to make that much money.
Terrible sales pitch.
No, nobody would do it.
If you can say, hey, do you want a luxurious lifestyle? Do you want this? Do you want to be the epitome of success? Do you want to be luxurious and have the car and like all these things? Come join this sisterhood. Come. And so that's kind of the allure that a lot of people have. And again, the greater culture tells us that this is a positive, this is women's empowerment. I've had people say, like, you're not a girl's girl. unless you support doing OnlyFans, because
those are scary words.
Yeah, and so I think that that's the majority of women, is they come into this, they think that it's empowering, they think it's a positive, and then they're like, oh, wait a minute, this is what I'm doing. Then that's where the shame comes into it, and all of those things. And then even trying to leave, it's not very simple. It's not like you can just delete your account and that's it and it's done. If you have paid subscribers on there, that's a whole process. You don't even get to get in touch with OnlyFans, you get a ticket. And then your content is on there forever, and that might not mean much to people, but a specific example I guess I'll say is I actually met a girl that was at the agency I was at, and she left, started a new job in a completely different industry, and somehow one of her ex-subscribers had all of her content and sent it to every single one of her brand new clients a year later. And it's like, these are the things that we don't understand getting into it, because again, we have this whole shiny picture. And then I guess I was just going to say, from the buyer perspective, it's about shattering that illusion for men. As we can see, it's very targeted, very specific, very curated. And so they believe they're talking to the girl. We would train our chatters in the girlfriend experience. And so you think you have a connection, you think this girl cares about you, but realistically it's some dude in the Philippines that's paid as a commission role to be able to get as much money from you as possible.
So they wouldn't sign up for someone else, a man or someone in a different country.
It's not unlike
they don't know that.
Digital version of a strip club. You go, you bring money, you have a connection, she's looking at me, I'm looking at her, I pay her money, she comes, and we have this simulated sexual experience. And that's really what we're talking about here. But for me, it's not simulated anymore, because now she knows my name, she's calling me by my name, we're messaging each other, because remember, the messaging is the new talking. Like, that's it. If you're messaging with me, we're friends, we're tight, we're close, you know me, I know you, I'm not the same as every other blah, 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 whatever. That whole fantasy, you can just say, oh, well, you know, they're paying for the fantasy, what does it hurt? It's sad to see a person at the end of realization that none of that was real, for the girl and for the buyer, the person who's consuming. And sometimes when it's not real enough, they're going to escalate to something else in person, whether that's strip club, massage,
meetups,
illicit massage, or buying sex and meetups. And I'm careful what I'm saying on some of the things, because we get some very specific details from men and why they are there in handcuffs that day. And so much of it comes back from this torrent of influence, this torrent of a sexual pursuit. They're chasing whatever that dopamine tells them they need, they want, and they end up making decisions that are so far from their internal beliefs and values. We work on deconstructing that and getting back to their beliefs and values, because otherwise they're just going to buy again or buy in another version.
It's that power of being click happy. One of the other things that is scary for me, you touched on this before, a lot of us grew up when we didn't have cell phones, when we, I remember, and this is going to age us all, but we're like, what is the internet? What is this thing we were learning in high school?
I think the hair on the side of my head has aged me enough. So
we are where we are.
This is not helping either, so yeah.
It's just trying to learn this new thing where, these kids grew up with, they've never known life without a cell phone. But for me, the acceleration of these sites, I remember hearing OnlyFans as there was a celebrity, I'm not going to name her, but we heard these things, oh, this is where so-and-so went, and she's been in a million movies, but she got millions of dollars by selling just photos, sexy photos, on OnlyFans, and then she was able to take her millions and leave. But that wasn't that long ago. If that was, good and true, that was less than 10 years ago. And here we are, and it's turned into this whole other thing. So based on what you all are saying today, that money isn't always necessarily there. It's not true.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it perhaps maybe from a logical perspective, but you can't compare, just say someone who has maybe a couple hundred followers that is thinking they can go on and take some sexy pictures, compared to a mega celebrity with millions of people influenced by them. And so even that curiosity aspect, perhaps maybe a celebrity could go on there and not do as extreme things, but again, what's their pool of people that are curious by that? Not that justifies it, but that's what we have to shatter in that illusion as well, because it's everyday girls that are jumping on thinking they can just take some pictures.
You see that? There's a disconnect.
That's right.
Yes.
It looks so easy.
Yes, the misconception.
I can do that.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah.
And if you get the right person at the right time to tell you you're pretty, and you can do it, well, that's it. This is my dream. I'm going to be discovered. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make all this money. I'm okay with the sexuality of it all. That's fine. I get to a point where, again, justification. And I get to a point where it's normalized. I get to a point where I can make this decision for myself because it's empowering. All of these are alibis. They're just alibis to act out in a way that if we really stepped off and got all the truth, we would say, that's not me. That's not what I want to be known for. That's not going to work for me. But the whole process is to obfuscate any of that. We don't want anybody to think about those things. We want them to go to a lavish party after we told them you're going to make it, and then you show up at this party and it's this wild party and you're like, I did make it. Like they've decided. And so they're in at that point. You know, you're talking about parents earlier. Fong Marquez is our associate director for demand disruption, and she does a lot of our Defend Home trainings. Well, she told me about a parent one time that came up afterwards and was practically in tears, and it was because the principles we were talking about brought her back to actual conversations she had with her kids, and she's like, I completely ruined those. I've completely failed on all of that. We're like, you didn't fail. You didn't. Just go back. That's the thing we think we can't do as parents, but we can. Think about how many times we're instructing our kid on something. What if we went to them and said, I don't get this OnlyFans thing. I don't get this Instagram. Just pick something that you're worried about and say, can you teach it to me? Like, I don't think I'm that dumb, but I guess I'm just getting old. Can you teach it to me? Put them in a position of power, let them show it to you, and then ask open-ended questions about what you're seeing. Instead of telling them that's bad, don't do that. I mean, parents have been trying that forever. And the more you tell them it's bad, don't do that, you're like, I wonder what that's going to be like when I do it.
But this is new territory for us. You know, it really is. We were outside playing with basketballs, and if you think you are so misinformed, if you think that that's how kids are going to play these days, you know, all the time because we didn't have the internet, you're sorely mistaken, and then you are also ill-informed. So with that in mind, on that point, tell us more about this Crime Stoppers event, how the public can get involved, and how you come into play as well.
It's going to be great. So I saw Victoria on a podcast, and as I'm listening to her talk, I'm hearing this mirroring of what we talk about in terms of manipulation and working with buyers, but also just sales in general. Like, how do we get people to do? So there's this mystery that needs to be discovered and uncovered, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about some of the realities of what she's seen as a recruiter, and we'll talk about some of the realities of inside the buyer's mind, and not just a buyer, but consumer. A buyer isn't necessarily somebody that pays money for something. It's somebody that takes goods or services. Like, for example, if you clicked on Google to I found my way here with Google Maps. I didn't pay for it, but I'm a customer. I searched something this morning on Google, and by searching that, I became a customer without paying a dime. Why? Because they make all their money on the back end. Ads, SEO, everything. When we understand how the business model works, we understand how we can be a little better equipped as parents, but also as individuals in a culture that is porn prevalent and hypersexualized. And so tonight, we're really going to take a very, I think, a ground level approach to it, and then explore what are the things that are happening that you don't see when you're looking at a website, and then what are the things that are true about it, and what can we control and do about it. That's going to be at 6:30 tonight, 6:30 to 8:30 at Crime Stoppers downtown. It's good. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
It's a free event for the public?
It's a free event.
Okay.
Please come. Yeah.
Okay.
And so Victoria, if you want to, sorry, I just got all excited. And
No,
ran.
it is. It's so
very
exciting.
passionate about this topic, though.
It is.
Very knowledgeable man.
Exactly. But that's it. It'll be really dissecting the inner workings of all of this, the greater culture, I guess, and how it does influence that. And I also feel like just a positive element of it is we'll also just share on, I guess, the miraculous way, how did I go from being a recruiter to sitting here in front of these people? And that's honestly one of my favorite stories, I think, and it shows a lot of hope, because this is really kind of heavy things that we do talk about, but I do also feel like we need to acknowledge the fact that there is a really beautiful story in all of this as well. You
were telling us a story last night at dinner about being in front of a bunch of kids and just seeing them kind of come out of their shell and feel like, okay, no, I can make better choices. I can do these things. That was just so uplifting, and that's what we're after. Is this isn't all gloom and doom. Let's wag our finger at the bad people. I don't even really. Yes, please put filters on your phones, But when we have our workshops, that's the last thing we talk about. It's not about building a bigger wall. It's about your kids being a better doorman. Who do I let in? You know, when that person's coming to me with this message, hey, I get one of those a day. I get a text message out of nowhere, hey, and I know what that is, spam, boop, nope. Because if I click on that, it's going to be some girl trying to engage me in a conversation and sell me the fantasy of a relationship of some sort, and it's going to cost me one way or many ways. I know that. A lot of people don't. The same is true for kids. When they see something that is appealing to them and it's made for them to bring their trust and have them in that environment, because I don't need to sell them right now. They don't have any money, but I'll sell them when they get a first job. I'll sell them when they're a professional. I'll sell them when they've gotten so good at keeping the secret of the thing that they're struggling with that we're going to make tons of money on them, and there are 10 million of them out there. That's the long con. That's the long cycle that we're going to talk about some tonight and continue to talk about.
And those people are getting smarter and smarter with how they're approaching and reaching out to not only adults but kids too. It used to be that just a Nigerian prince who wanted our money via email, but that's not the case anymore. Sometimes even the scams you see on text messages, those are getting more advanced too. So that is good to put that knowledge out there for not only parents but also for the kids. Now I want to ask you, as you've become this advocate for change and positivity in this digital world and exploitation, when you're talking with children, what are some of the questions that they have asked you?
I think for them, a lot of the questions that they ask is about, like, I had this young man on Sunday ask me about how have you dealt with like the shame and the guilt, and a lot of kids ask me that of how have you healed, I guess, from being able to do this? How can you speak out? How can you not want to, just kind of ruin yourself with that? And I think that that's a really important thing, that in this context of what we're talking about, I do see a lot of kids that do come up and they're like, I am, young children, I'm addicted to porn. So many kids, the mental health, even little girls being like, I do find that I want attention and validation from boys, and I understand, I do play into these. How do you deal with that? And I think that that's a big thing that kids are looking for, is in this context that we're talking about, is how do I cope with the shame? How do I cope with the guilt? How do I break free of these things? And so that's a really beautiful conversation that I do have quite often with kids, is about how do you have the capacity to do this and not really feel kind of, I guess, horrible in yourself? And then another really common question is, and this is the one that I think is quite unique, is I've had many kids say, oh, so it's not real. And I think that we forget, kind of to the point we were saying before, is we've all in some capacity grown up without social media. I'm 26, so when social media became big for me, I was about like 13, 14. So I lived in a world before it. A lot of these kids live in a world where their whole entire reality is what I see on social media is real. And so I think that it's about also just shattering that illusion for them of, hey, a lot of it is manipulated. There is, again, these major industries that are driving forces behind a lot of this stuff. And that does something to kids. And like I say this in the kindest way, but kids got a little bit of attitude. They don't want to be told what to do. So if you tell a child that you're being manipulated, this isn't real, they go, dang, and they reject it.
Nobody
they don't
wants
want
to
to hear
tricked.
it. They don't want to hear it.
And that's what I love in this conversation, is I've had kids verbatim go back to me, I don't want to be softly influenced, I want to be countercultural, and they see, because kids are rebels at the end of the day, and so it's actually being rebellious to say, I'm not going to play into that. So I think that they're the really beautiful kind of remarks as well that I get from kids. That's
awesome.
Well, I think this event is going to be spectacular, and I hope people come with lots of questions. There's so much to cover with this, and I just really am so grateful that you are both here and helping educate not only the Houston area population, but I think this is a nationwide and even a global issue that people are just not aware of. So it starts with both of you.
If I could just add, we're going to actually have a live stream tonight on our Facebook page. So not everybody can get there. So if you can't get there physically, you can be there virtually on our Facebook page. Log on to be about 6:30 when we get started. If you are coming, please let us know. We want to feed you. You can send an email to info@demanddisruption.org, or you can DM us on any of our social media. But it's going to be a powerful evening. And it is, I've been doing this for quite a while. We just had our 9th year, celebrated our 9th year. You emceed it, thank you. That was awesome. I don't know that I've ever shared the platform with somebody who can tell the story of the process manipulation, the soft manipulation, like we do when we talk about buyers. So it's going to be in a convergence that you're just not really going to hear anywhere else. So I hope that people are able to make it tonight. And thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
come in not knowing a thing, and I feel so, but I like to interview people like yourselves like this, because a lot of people have to start from scratch with this subject, and they want to protect their kids. That is the heart of all of these conversations. So thank you again to our panelists, Victoria Sinis and Joe Madison. Of course, I'm Stephanie Simmons. Thank you all for watching. And we do have a lot of original content ready for you, including more discussions just like this one we had. So be sure to watch for those for free right here on KHOU 11 Plus.